kind of a last-minute invite extended via Leo, who just spoke this morning. He's part of our consortium as well. I am not a data scientist. I'm not a computational social scientist. I'm the old-fashioned kind of social scientist. My training.
Can I add nothing wrong with that?
Nothing wrong with that. My training was in music sociology, and I coordinate a project called Open Music Europe, which is a part of a research and innovation cluster working toward a competitive, fair, and sustainable European music ecosystem. We comprise 3 projects spanning 20 countries. We include collective rights management organizations in 8 countries, which gives us a practitioner impact in addition to our scientific impact. And our shared ethos is data for policy. So my project, initiated in January 2023, running until the end of this year, comprises 15 partners in 11 countries, and you can check us out on that website if you have any interest. Some of our partners include the University of Turku, represented by Leo. My own institution is a non-university research institute called Sinus. We do a lot of research-based consultancy for German ministries, civil society organizations, etc., and several other universities, as well as collective rights management organizations, small music enterprises, music export organizations, including Music Export Ukraine, who's doing fascinating work on Ukrainian music ecosystems, resilience and survivability during wartime. I especially encourage you to check them out. And our project structure is kind of based on this report that was created in 2020, which set the basis for this funding initiative called the Feasibility Study for the Establishment of a European Music Observatory. And some of you might be familiar with the observatory concept. An observatory is a structure that facilitates observation of whatever trend, be it biophysical, geological, social, scientific. And this feasibility study proposed 4 data collection pillars relevant to the survival of European music industry: an economic pillar, a music diversity and circulation pillar, a pillar on music society and citizenship, broadly defined the non-economic contributions of music to human flourishing, and a pillar on innovation and future trends. So we just translated each of those into a work package. And each of our work packages culminates in a pilot project. Work package 2 on music diversity and circulation culminates in a pilot project on metadata harmonization and federated data spaces, which is what I will introduce you to today. And the aim of that pilot project is to enhance discoverability for EU artists via transparent standards-based and GDPR-compliant data collection and management methods. So a short divergence. I made some notes during other people's talks. The origin of the project was in this feasibility study and also in a set of coordinated pilot projects led by a Dutch-Hungarian data consultancy called Reprex and various Central and Eastern European collective rights management organizations, including the Czech Authors' Rights Society. And the fundamental research problem that drove these projects was, why do recommender systems not recommend Slovak music to Slovak-speaking people in Slovakia? And this problem can be transposed to many small music markets, the Hungarian music market, the Czech music market, the Finno-Ugric music market, et cetera, if there is such a thing. And an interesting example here is there a web browser that I can access? Ah, here we go. Ah, great. Thanks. Sorry. No. Is anybody familiar with Forgotify? It's a cool project which indexes songs that are on Spotify but have never been played. And you can check it out. There are hundreds of thousands of songs that have been uploaded to Spotify but never once played. And the cool thing about it is it's a self-effacing archive. So the minute you play it, it disappears from Forgotify. Brilliant concept. Anyway, check it out. It's really fun. It gives you about 90% garbage and 10% absolute gold, weird Turkish pop music from the 70s, or forgotten Yiddish hymns recorded in 1920 in Berlin. we can try that later. Here I'll note an overlap on Leo's work with forgotten literature. So the importance of metadata in memory conservation spans the artistic domains. This problem also applies, though, to other search and discovery systems, including music libraries and music information centers, which are queried by human curators like radio editors, concert promoters, festival organizers, etc. So say I want to organize a festival of Central and Eastern European old music, released or published before 1700 or whatever. I query various music information centers, music libraries in order to track down sheet music that I can borrow for the festival. So these issues of search and discovery apply not only to the consumer-facing pop repertoire, but also national classical and folk repertoires. And the finding of these pilot projects has been that many small repertoires have either sporadic and low-quality data representation, and this applies primarily to national pop subgenre repertoires, historical folk repertoires, etc., minority language repertoires. And then other small repertoires have high quality but siloed data representation. And this applies primarily to national classical repertoires. And think here, for instance, the name Bela Bartok, which is written with diacritics, appears in many Anglo-American libraries without the diacritics. So obviously contemporary search technology allows us to get around that. It's a simplistic example, but this kind of problem occurs, especially in transposition of non-Roman alphabets, et cetera, et cetera. And also genre labeling. So if we go to Spotify, oops, and say I want to listen to Slovak hip hop. Indeed, here we have a playlist Hip Hop Slovakia, but if I want to listen to Slovak rap, then Radio Slovak Philharmonic pops up. And this is because of inconsistencies in the data representation across languages, et cetera. So this can lead to misdirected search and discovery. So a digression to what is an observatory, this pilot project on a European Music Observatory recommended the creation of something similar to the European Audiovisual Observatory, which is a centralized organization that is funded to institute studies, engage in active data collection, et cetera. We had a slightly different proposal, which was to shift from a centralized music observatory to a federated and decentralized music observatory, i.e. a set of tools and resources for data curators who want to make the data that they already have more observable, more discoverable, and thus more usable. This would improve its public good impact, and in the case of commercial repertoires, it would also improve competitiveness and the chance of decent remuneration for artists. So ergo, recognitional and distributional justice. So we approach it from a more bottom-up and justice-driven, fairness-driven perspective. And the way that we see this being possible is as an interoperable open data space guided by the European Interoperability Framework, which comprises a legal level, an organizational level, a semantic level, and a technical level. And what we've done in Slovakia, on the legal level, we've attempted to understand and reconcile the data protection rules of the Slovak Music Information Center, the Slovak National Library, and the various collective rights management organizations, as well as other stakeholders, and this has been incredibly challenging. For instance, we're exploring the legal feasibility of an opt-out rather than an opt-in model for gaining author permission for the CMO to share new music track information automatically with the Music Information Center. And this is what the legal department kind of is doing. On the organizational level, we're trying to bring the technical teams of all of these institutions together in competence building workshops to help them organize understand each other's data management workflows, which can be very different. On a semantic level, we are trying to ensure that their databases are consistent and well documented with regard to formats, also with regard to known gaps, problems, inconsistencies, et cetera. And then finally, on a technical level, once these previous three steps are achieved, we can try to enable successful data exchanges between these stakeholders and also start to push data to the global platforms in a legally compliant way. So to Wikidata, to Europeana, to the various national namespaces, to the European Cultural Heritage Cloud, to Music Brains, and finally to streaming platforms like Spotify. And so the conceptual overview of this Slovak music data space, it integrates data when it is needed and permitted, using automated or semi-automated processes to carry out some basic integrations like named entity recognition and translation. And then other integrations that are especially labor-intensive or sensitive, like rights management, can be postponed until they are needed. And with regard to data curation and sources, the wide range of competence levels involved complicates everything. We have participants ranging from data curation excellence centers whose literal job is curating data, to data expert organizations with trained and competent data management teams, to music scholars like me. I'm at the very bottom of the ladder, and ironically, I'm talking to all you people who are up at the top, who often work in spreadsheets or are data frames, or and hence need really extensive training and perhaps in some cases even full data curation support. So bringing all these stakeholders together with the aim of ensuring that the Slovak Music Information Center has accurate and up-to-date information on all Slovak music that is released. And note here also a definitional challenge. So is the criteria for Slovak music the citizenship or residency of the composer or the performer? Is it the language of the lyrics? Is it the legal jurisdiction in which the copyrights are managed? Sometimes copyrights to a single track are managed in multiple legal jurisdictions. And then when you die, would say yes, but based on the various criteria that we have just specified, the answer in formal logical information center automatically ingests accurate and up-to-date information on Slovak music. We then push it to global music information systems in an annotated, standardized machine-readable format, an RDF format, including public systems like Europeana and the European Cultural Heritage Cloud, national libraries, and also private systems like Music Brains and Spotify. The technical foundation is Wikibase, and that is where my competence ends. I would be happy to pass on your info to my colleagues in the project who will gladly dive into the technical nitty-gritty with you. The initial focus is on the harmonization of registration processes for named entities to ensure that every artist, music group, recording, publication, etc., receives a single globally visible, unique, and persistent identifier, like a VIAF code. And that VIAF code allows connecting data across platforms, for instance, as it's necessary for royalty distribution without sharing personally identifiable information. So that was the focus of the coordination of the legal team working toward this opt-out rather than opt-in mechanism for the assignation of a unique identifier, and the artist management team actually communicating this to artists, trying to get them on board, and the technical team working on the implementation solution. So our eventual aim is to move toward a European music data space. All of our tools are open source and all of our data is open access to the extent permitted by GDPR. This would allow the formation of replicable national and interoperable by design systems. So we're starting in Slovakia, we're working in parallel in Hungary, a few steps behind. And with the tool set that we've developed in principle, any music information center and CMO pairing, for instance, consortium, could do something similar that would be interoperable by design with what we've done. In principle, this could lay the foundation for a data federation of interoperable and compatible music data spaces or music observatories. So the challenges in the next steps. We're trying to build outward from a namespace to an ontology, and this is a formal specification of properties, roles, and relations. And this is important for socio-legal reasons, because roles in music production attach to royalty distribution, attach to rights and royalty distribution. So there's a concrete economic impact to the definition of roles and relations in the music sector. There's a socio-legal challenge here as well, because these rights and royalties are managed by various organizations with convergent and divergent economic and political interests. And sometimes their understanding of their interests militates against data sharing. There's also a socio-technical challenge. As previously mentioned, the attribution of Slovakness, right? Relations like nationality, sex, gender, minority status, etc., are all embedded in power structures. Or as Sarah Mai termed it, an indexical regime that connects to a governance regime and an economic regime, etc. And these challenges intersect. So practices of documenting sex and gender, for instance, impact both representational justice or the distribution of discoverability and distributional justice, the literal distribution of royalties, of money. And here we're working with organizations like Key Change, who organize voluntary representational diversity pledges in music festivals, for example, and Gender Music Tech, who have released a music gender metadata manifesto, which is really interesting. I encourage you to check it out if this kind of thing floats your boat. And I was in a conversation, which I mentioned at lunch with the director of the Music Gender Metadata Manifesto team, and they're being forced to rethink everything that they had done over the past couple of years because of the current political sea change, the vector toward a constellation of big tech and right-wing populist authoritarian governments makes it conceivable that in the current environment, right, gender metadata could be used to suppress discoverability rather than enhancing the discoverability of non-conforming artists. We would not have thought that this would be possible 3 years ago, but now it's very conceivable. So these are some of the challenges that we're working on, and I would be happy to try to answer any questions.
Thank you, James. Floor is open.
I have a question. Earlier there was talking about the fact that when we develop some system that actually curates or manages the bibliographic records for a particular country, it's very difficult to actually transfer it to a different bibliographic system because they are simply different, and it might be difficult to replicate that. And we're talking about replicating the system, that includes legal layers and multiple layers. So how replicable is it in practice when you're talking about if you can compare it with the Slovak Hungarian system? Because I can imagine it can be quite challenging.
You would be imagining correctly. We came into the project with sky-high ambitions, and we very quickly found ourselves back on Earth. The only reason why replication in Hungary is feasible is because these organizations have been working together for several years and have built up trust. And the non-quantifiable dimension here is interpersonal trust between the actual human agents involved in curating the data, right? Because these are sensitive data for many various reasons. And I guess the instinctive default is against sharing. And overcoming that default setting requires trust. Here we also political considerations come into play. We spent months preparing and massaging a memorandum of understanding with the Slovak Ministry of Culture. We signed the memorandum to the aim, and this was actually my work package, to the aim of integrating additional voluntary data collection instruments into their national surveying program. I'm a survey sociologist, so this would be gold for me, right? To have the infrastructure of a national statistical organization as a distribution mechanism for my survey questions is like a dream come true. And we were this close, and then the election happened. And the minister got swapped out, and the new guy doesn't want to work with us. So End of the story, right? So the way that interpersonal and political factors play into what kinds of data collection, management, and dissemination are possible, I find really quite fascinating.
Yeah, I like your example for Spotify.
Yeah,
Because I don't like how Spotify handles metadata. Do you have any plan to somehow cooperate with Spotify and YouTube and other services to improve their metadata and improve their services?
I don't want to badmouth the platforms. They're pretty satisfied with their current set of practices, in my experience. And the fact that other people, that researchers aren't satisfied is really scheißegal. To use my favorite German term. The exception to that rule is DESER. DESER is more willing to work with researchers. I don't know why exactly. I personally haven't worked with them, but one of our sister projects is working with them. And if you're curious about that, I could put you in touch with the coordinator of that project. But personally, no, I don't have any experience, direct contact to the platforms.
Can I ask about your own research interests?
Sure.
So that this kind of a expansive infrastructure project that have all kinds of difficult dimensions, how do you balance what you are as a researcher interested and then being able to use the data and work with it, and then so that it doesn't, your role doesn't become only infrastructure in a way? How do you?
I don't.
Well, I mean,
right now, my role is 90% infrastructure. Yeah. But
okay, let's put it like that. What are the, now that you've come down to earth?
Yeah.
That how do you see now the research questions that you have in mind? How do you see those answered in the near future, or so? That what is it that you really want to do, or do you want to become a federator for the future?
Yeah, good question. My personal research interest is in the application of ecosystem metaphors to music cultures. What does it mean to think of a music culture as an ecosystem, both in the contemporary extended tech sector metaphor of just a set of interoperable or interdependent actors, but also literally with regard to a geophysically cited set of practices. And the music surveys that we're going to conduct in March should help us to quantify the relationships between actors and their boundedness by rule systems, which to me is interesting because that connects to the socio-ecological systems framework that I've used in my prior research. So I hope to get a couple of publications out of it in the end. But mostly, mostly I'm just a project manager right now.
Nothing wrong
for
with
the
that.
next 11 months. No, nothing wrong with that. It's interesting and I've learned a lot. But I am counting the days until I can get back to doing some actual research.
And we have one
Yeah.
question on the chat, also from Linda Jansova from Czech Library.
Oh, cool.
I might have missed that information, but apart from the Slovak National Library, do you collaborate with other libraries? And does this collaboration involve using bibliographic and or authority data produced by the libraries?
We just had a presentation at IAMC, the professional organization for music information centers. And there were a couple of national libraries present who were interested in our work. I don't know what the current status of cooperation is. I think we particularly had interest from the Baltics, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, in which there are many ethnic minority folk traditions, which are relatively well documented, but thoroughly siloed. So I would be glad to pass that question along to Daniel, who leads this pilot project. But yeah, great question. And national libraries are definitely at the top rung of our target audiences. So if we can make connections there, we're very happy.
Very good. Room for one more question, and then we all get coffee. We don't get coffee if somebody asks a question. That's what Boyd told me.
I know.
I'm just the messenger. Anyone?
Okay, so, question?
I was going to ask you all a question. Has anybody worked with music metadata? Or does anybody, aside from Leah? Okay, then.
You will have quite a lot of metadata. Can you share it? Can you share your metadata?
My own metadata?
that you actually have? Will it be kind of accessible in any way, or?
My middle name, okay, my metadata challenge is this. There's a guy who was born, I was born in 1980. There's another US American citizen born in 1980 named James Edwards, who is a notorious neo-Nazi. I'm not joking. He has an indexed website on the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is an organization that tracks right-wing extremists. So when somebody searches my name, he pops up. And so that's my metadata challenge. I want to increase my own discoverability to the extent that I eclipse my Nazi doppelganger. Sounds like a joke, but it's not. I've been asked during job interviews just to make sure you're not this guy, are you? And I have to say,
let's not stop here. So one more thing. I mean, during the morning talk, you said there was this red hat idea that,
yeah,
and you said that you can tell what happens. So please.
I can't personally, but I can maybe provide a key to the missing piece to the puzzle, which is in a separate work package, we had a guy who was collecting, just scraping hundreds of thousands of unique identifier, music track unique identifiers from Spotify, matched to this proprietary popularity index that Spotify does. And his challenge was to create like a random walk algorithm that can produce statistically identical samples of a population of tracks to improve the computational efficiency of doing this kind of work. So instead of trying to run an algorithm on 100,000 tracks, you can sample, 1,000 tracks and be relatively confident that that sample is representative, which is challenging for a range of technical reasons, and then run the algorithm on that 1,000, and then you don't need a supercomputer. So this data set might be able to help Leo solve that problem.
Right.
And that data will also be open access eventually. So
just to ask what James asked, if someone worked with using metadata, so we learned a little bit with using National Library metadata. The question was whether humanities researchers have this impact on society and culture that they contribute to editions of music, like they will be part of the process, write some text on the cover, whatever, right? Because they probably, for example, they are medieval literature scholars, and it seems like there is something there to explore and basically to kind of assess their more in a broader way that their knowledge is used for this kind of niche editions of music. So, but it can be done, and there are typical metadata problems like lack of persistent identifiers for people. So then you don't, and for example, we wanted to connect ORCID to national libraries, right? Because we wanted to assess the specific researcher, and then, but then national library, you don't have the same identifiers or gap. So when the names were kind of more common, we couldn't really assess it.
Yeah, interesting.
But it all progresses, right? Because there's all an identifier. So it was like 2 years ago, maybe. So probably there is also it's a Polish national library. But if there are some good ones, good national libraries with good identifiers that could be done, probably with more efficiency.
Interesting. We just onboarded the Polish Music Export Organization to our project. So we will start working in Poland, but we only have 11 months. So I don't know how much we'll be able to accomplish.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, very good. Session, thank all those speakers once more.